Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with legal analyst Carl B. Grant on day 8 of the double murder trial for Alec Murdaugh. Before the break, we talked about the theory that the defense has been trying to convey to the jury that there was possible 2 shooters there on the night that Paul and Maggie were murdered. When you look at the video that was released today, how does that video now impact that theory?
Well, the defense was arguing that there were possibly 2 shooters and maybe even someone doing some type of ambush at a higher level, waiting for Paul to show up. The thing about that is, now that you have this testimony, essentially putting Mr. Murdaugh right there at the scene where the incident occurred about 3 to 4 to 5 minutes before. If there were other shooters that showed up, they had a short window to do so, okay? So that's going to impact that to a great deal and make it seemingly unlikely.
Testimony is continuing at this hour. For days leading up to this point, they concluded testimony for the day. So our crews are still there in the courtroom. We'll have a live report on whatever new revelations are coming up because they've been talking about the Snapchat video. Carl, the other thing that they talked about before the jury came back in after this last break were attorneys trying to make an argument regarding financial crimes and the evidence related to those crimes. How crucial will the decision be? Because Judge Newman says he's going to make a decision on a case-by-case basis. How crucial will that evidence be if indeed they are able to admit it? Well,
the prosecution has laid that out as their theory of prosecution, that this was the motive. And I remind you again that they do not have to prove motive in a murder case. But the prosecution also realizes how important it is to keep your promise to a jury. Now, if you said that financial crimes and misdeeds are the reason for this horrible thing happening, then we need to hear some evidence of that at least. So that's why they're really trying to get this in. And I think that's really why they're pushing for the admissibility of that evidence.
Carl, we're just learning that the Snapchat video has been played inside of the courtroom that one of Paul's friends testified that he saw that Snapchat earlier. What's interesting about this, though, that a friend also testifying that Alec Murdaugh is wearing long pants and a shirt in that video.
Carl.
Not what he was wearing later on that evening, shorts and a white t-shirt.
Okay.
Did we not say that early on in our discussions with you, that we wanted to know what was on that Snapchat video and what he might have been wearing, and if it matched the attire, that white t-shirt and shorts that we saw in that video?
No timestamp on that video just yet, but that does raise the question for Alec Murdaugh, did he change?
Well, where are those clothes?
And where are those clothes?
Yeah, that creates what the prosecution will argue is a smoking gun. They're going to argue, of course, that clearly he had to change. And that would explain all of the arguments about why he didn't have any blood on his clothing, blood on his pants, and make the logical argument he had to change clothes. Now, how do we know he changed clothes? Because the Snapchat video shows when this thing happened, or at least at the time of the Snapchat, he was wearing different clothing. So common sense says he had to change clothes because he wasn't wearing long clothes. He was wearing shorts when they interviewed him.
Right.
So like you said, Judy, what happened to the clothing?
I mean, it takes me back to that freeze frame they had. Remember the first responder on scene, and he was talking with him, and they took a freeze frame image from that video, and he's standing there in a perfectly clean white shirt, and you also see him in that white shirt in the video where they're sitting in the car, and he's, I won't say being interrogated, but they are questioning him and recording that video. So, Carl, what can we expect from the defense? What does the defense need to do to try and make their case for their client?
The defense at this point has to rely upon whatever witnesses they intend to call, or if any. Keep in mind, they don't have to call any, but they have to rely upon the fact that the prosecution still has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And sometimes that's all you have, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt. And because the charge is going to be that not only must the jury be convinced, they must be firmly convinced of this man's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they have any reason to doubt his guilt as a matter of law, they must find him not guilty and keep their oath.
That is some
that not
explosive testimony.
And that may be why the judge allowed testimony to continue, or they wanted to try and get to this point.
Absolutely.
Today before they rest their case, but we'll have to see what they decide to do and who else could be called because the witness list was so long.
Yes, and I thought the first witness we talked about with Snapchat was the crescendo. Maybe it was the crescendo, but the final note apparently was this last witness you just mentioned.
Yeah,
wow.
That's going to be interesting. One last question, just from a conversation that I've seen on people watching on Twitter and on Facebook. Is there any reason as to why Dick Harpootlian may not be taking the front seat today? We're seeing more of Jim Griffin. I know that you touched on personality from the lawyer may having something to do with that. Do you think that's what we're seeing here?
I wouldn't say that. I've been a member of many different trial teams, and of course you use normally the lawyer to handle the witness that you think is best suited to handle that witness. Mr. Harpootlian may be taking a backseat momentarily, but I would imagine when it comes time for the closing argument, you will hear from Mr. Harpootlian. I would expect that wholeheartedly.
Right. Carl, great insights as always. That really explosive moment that Billie just told us about. Greg, Adeline, and Nick Neville are in the courtroom, and they'll have those live reports coming up for us in just a bit on WIS News at 6.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, and we will see Carl back here tomorrow with more.